Good afternoon, everybody. It's Lee Cassidy from Tactile Technology with my weekly In the Hot Seat Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. I am running a little bit late, so I do apologise, about a minute later than normal. But what we've got today is Alec Anderson of Koolmill joining us. So I'll bring Alec in a second. But what we're going to do, as we normally do on a Thursday, is focus on the business prior to being involved with the Goldman Sachs program, and then how that program has helped the business, and then going forward what the business is doing. So let's get Alec in and say hello. How are you doing, Alec?
Good afternoon, Lee. I'm doing fine, thanks.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself and Koolmill prior to doing the actual Goldman Sachs program itself.
Wow, okay. Well, Koolmill came as a surprise to me. I left school and ran away to sea. I ended up working for Shell as a marine engineer, and that was going nowhere. So I came back to university as a mature student. Went to Aston in 1982, and in my vacation between second and third year, I needed a job. Went to a local company for 12 weeks. That evolved into a final year project. That evolved into a job, and then we ended up buying the company. Since then, we've been developing the new processing technology for rice, particularly. We're extending that now to cereals. And it's been a long, hard slog changing how the world is fed. And that was the lead up to us engaging with Goldman Sachs was, I guess, a normal program for many small businesses. We were focused on working in the business, and we didn't necessarily stand back and look at the strategy.
So how did you hear about the Goldman Sachs program?
It came from a friend who had been through the program, and they had said to me, you should be looking at this. Interestingly, I had actually previously looked at it and decided it wasn't for me, but it was only after the intervention of somebody who'd been through the course really brought it to my attention, and then we took it from there.
So what about the actual application process? So I would assume, like I did, you had to put in lots of details about your business, where you're going, where you've been, some financial data, and then went through some interviews?
Yeah, I think we were a relatively late application, but I think, how can we put it politely, Koolmill's an untypical company. But then lots of the companies in Goldman Sachs are not typical. So yeah, we had a very hurried interview. It was arranged very quickly, so the team were very flexible and very helpful. And I found myself sitting in front of my inquisitor, and we had a very wide-ranging conversation. Which was really good, quite interesting, and I think he was quite obviously liked what we were doing because we made it through to the course.
Who it wasn't Mark Hart, was it? I had Mark Hart interview me, and that was an interesting interview.
No, I think I can't remember his name now. It was a Greek guy, and for a life of me, I had trouble remembering my own name. But no, it was. But I think it's, I would say, tough but fair, because there is a barrier, or there is a benchmark they want you to reach.
Yeah,
it's, you have to have a reason to be on the course, so it's not a gentle chat.
No,
but it was fair, and it was good. And I think even if you go through the application process, having that conversation alone is valuable.
Yeah, definitely. And you say at least gives you pointers, to where you should be looking at your business and improving things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about kicking off, because you did one of the local programs, didn't you, Aston? So it was slightly different to my experience of the national program, where we did online learning and 3 residentials. Yours was predominantly focused around the Aston Business School, wasn't it?
Yes, it was quite challenging for me at the time. I was working in China, so I was sort of buzzing back and forwards between Birmingham and China, and we had I think it was 2 days. I think it was every other week, something like that. But yes, it was located in the university. I understand the new program and why they've done it the way they've done it. But for me, I think that the way we did it was more beneficial for me, and certainly working and interacting and building the relationships on a face-to-face basis was much more productive. But I guess what you did was just programming for what we're doing now and endless Zoom calls.
Yeah, I think it made it easier for them to move to this new COVID world last year with the program. So yeah, a big change there. So what about the other members of your particular group? So what type of businesses did you have on there?
Yeah, we had a really interesting mix, which I think is part of the whole the way the program works or why it works, is because we're not all the same. We have many of the same problems, but we're not all the same businesses. So I think in my growth group, we had, a communications specialist, a healthcare specialist, a stretch ceiling specialist, a recruitment consultant. There's 5 of us, and that was it, I think. So yeah, a varied bunch.
Yeah, because I think in most groups you don't get more than 2 people that do something similar across the whole intake. So in the growth groups normally there's everybody's different, aren't they, in the particular growth group?
Yeah, I could say with some certainty we were the only rice millers.
Yeah, okay. We didn't have any rice millers on any of ours. We did actually have a normal mill. We had a gentleman that ran a mill where they milled wheat and things and made cake mixers from it. So a similar idea, but not quite the same. So tell us a little bit about how the process worked and that. You're going in every other week, and were you doing a particular module each week, or was it every other week as it went on?
Yeah, I think we had 10 modules spread over 6 months, I think it was. So yeah, you follow I guess I haven't seen the structure of the new system, but I guess it's following the same basic principles. So yes, you do your introduction and then you go through the modules sequentially. Some are more appropriate, and of course, I think like all small businesses, there's things we like to do and things we like to avoid doing.
Yeah. So out of those different modules, which were the most value to you? Because everybody's going to need help in different areas. Sometimes it's finance for those without any experience there. Sometimes it's sales and marketing. Sometimes HR. And one thing I remember from my process, there was a lot of the one module that was talking about community and giving back to the community, and that wasn't something I'd ever thought about before.
Yeah, we're a small family business, so we've always been values driven. So we are about value. Value doesn't necessarily just mean money. I think for us, like many small businesses, how could we put it? We're probably chaotic, a lack of process and procedure. We are all there to grow. The reason we want to be in business is to grow a global business. If you're going to grow a global business, you can't do it on the back of the fag paper, packet, or on stick-it pads, or in my head. So as you grow, you have to, whether you like it or not, there is a necessity for process and procedures. Yeah. And I think when we were starting with a sort of clean sheet, to look at other people, how they're doing it, and try and learn from that experience, and perhaps also sometimes from some of the mistakes they'd made, and avoid some of the pitfalls. So I think one of the strongest things, most powerful things about the course is the openness and frankness with which people discuss things that you perhaps wouldn't expect people to be very open about. So there's that whole closed environment, that trust element within the group. Very important.
Yeah, so quite different to the usual networking meeting you might go to, and you're telling everybody all the good things and maybe some things that aren't quite the truth about how big your business is, how many employees you've got and things. But within your growth group and also the extended group of people within that particular intake, you've got a lot more openness, haven't you, about what's going on?
Look, if people are going to help you, they have to understand where you are really, not where you're pretending to be. And I think we're all, what I would say is I can pay my accountants, my lawyers, or I can go to networking meetings. Often people reflect back to you what they think you want to hear.
Yeah.
But if you can engage with the process fully and be completely open, you'll be surprised at how beneficial the advice comes back. And sometimes it's things but didn't want to acknowledge. And sometimes that's just been reflected back to you, but in that trusting environment, there's a clarity there. You know what you need to do. You already knew what you needed to do. You've just been putting it off for as possible.
Very true.
I think that brings it home when you know, and people are not. It's not scoring points because nobody has any reason to score a point. It's just complete honesty.
So what about moving, taking that learning and using it for yourself, but also adopting it into the business? So how did you go about that?
Well, I think I was in a relatively privileged position because I'd come out of a big corporate and we took over the company with a business plan, with a sort of structure in mind. But I think after a number of years of running the business individually, and I think maybe like most small business people, you assume everybody else is doing everything much better than you, and you're doing a really bad job at what you're doing. So maybe one of the most important things in working in the group, I found out, hey, cut yourself some slack. Okay, you're not brilliant, but you're not as bad as you thought you were. Other people have problems as well, pretty much the same as my problems. So I think from me, I did that course to benefit me, not necessarily the company, for me to grow as a person and as a manager. And I think what it did do was it sort of reaffirmed that the basic plan we had was kind of structurally sound, and it gave me the confidence to go out and develop and push that plan with a bit more oomph than perhaps we would have done if we just kept meandering along. So that building of the confidence was hugely beneficial.
And what about other people within the business? You know, were they encouraged to grasp it and use this new knowledge?
Yeah, I think one of the benefits in being in a really small business, like we're now 9, we've just hired some 4 people in the last 3 months, but you know we've been kind of steady at 5 for a number of years. So we have a very flat structure. You know, we don't have a hierarchical, so everybody knows everything. And so it's very easy to communicate. We all kind of bought into the vision. We're all very much aligned. In fact, we've been doing some disc profiling, and we're going to have to get some people who like detail and accounts and stuff like that because we're all creative. We're all shooting off it, you know, for the next new idea. Yeah. So we're kind of all well aligned. So we work well as a small team. But, you know, as we grow, some of the things we learned in the Goldman Sachs, you know, about the right people in the right place, and you know, just as I say, process and procedures. How do we do things to avoid making costly mistakes? That will come more into the fore as we go forward, I think.
So one of the things that I found, and most people that I've spoken to on doing these interviews, is it's also the peer value, that peer support, and be able to call on someone either in your growth group or the wider community to help in any area that you're struggling within, whether that's I'm not sure what's going to happen around cash flow. What can I do about it? I'm struggling to get new customers and convert them. So people have got lots of different things that they go off to their peer group and ask for. Have you used much of that?
Yeah, we've done some business with, I was just trying to rack my brain here to think what we've done, but we've actually done, so Glassworks, one of our earlier cohort are doing machining for us on our machinery, and we also do a bit of consultancy, and we did some work with another Goldman Sachs member on that. So yeah, there's been a sort of a business element, but there's been an advice element as well. Some people were closer to than others in our growth group, but yeah, you can go. It's a huge a pool of knowledge to call on if it's there, and people are very generous in helping where they can.
Do you do many of the alumni events? I know in the past it was great. We used to physically go to them in Birmingham, Leeds, and also down Oxford and London. But nowadays they're mainly virtual. But do you get much benefit from the alumni itself?
Absolutely. I try to get involved in as many of the events as possible. So I've been down to Houses of Parliament. I've been to we did a one in the Park. In London, one at the British Museum, one at the Goldman Sachs headquarters. Yeah, so there's some really interesting events that they put on, and some of the people you meet at these events you wouldn't normally get access to. So, some of the politicians were quite interesting just to be able to, get face to face and explain how life really is for a small business, not how it might be presented to them. So yeah, there's a fantastic opportunity there in terms of engagement, not just with the alumni, but also with people outside of the alumni that are introduced through the program. So yeah, really useful. I know a lot of people have been on committees and things like that. I haven't done any of that sort of work, but yes, a voice for our community in higher places is a very powerful thing.
Yeah, I think I went to the one at the British Museum that you mentioned, and I also went to. I think we spoke at the one in the Parliament as well when we met the small business minister, and we had the little cocktail party by the side of the river at the back of the House of Commons, didn't we? So, which was quite useful. So yeah, I've really value the alumni piece as well. I think it's quite useful. So tell us about Koolmill in the future then. We spoke earlier before we kicked off, and you were talking about some of the projects you're involved in, because you're up in Sheffield at Sheffield University at the moment, and you've got things going there. You've also got activities that we're commonly working on with the Advanced Services Group at Aston as well. So tell us a little bit, what you're doing at the moment, where you're going with Koolmill.
Yeah, well, since Goldman Sachs, we've really pushed the collaborative nature of the business. We got involved in a lot of Innovate UK projects. I think currently we're either leading, involved in, or waiting the outcome of bids for 10 projects. We have 30 collaborations in 7 different countries across 10 projects worth about £6 or £7 million, I think. So that's been hugely beneficial in terms of moving the business forward. It's really unlocked the potential by being able to engage with manufacturing technology academic partners. So this is a complete reversal from where we were before Goldman Sachs, where we were very insular, one little company working on our own, trying to fight against the might of our major competitors. Now we have formed these strategic collaborations across the world, which are working very well.
So, I'm going to put up some contact details. So if anybody wants to contact Alec to learn a bit more about Koolmill, or is interested in the kind of things that the Koolmill equipment can be used for, which is predominantly rice milling, is it mainly third world countries, or are you doing it in other places as well?
No, we can go from one of the beauties of our technology is available to all millers, regardless of size, gender, or location. So even the largest mills in the world can access our technology, and the very smallest millers in the world can have exactly the same performance, but at a level that's appropriate to their needs.
And I believe, from our conversations with the Advanced Services Group over the last few years, one of the key things is trying to increase the yield as well, isn't it? To make sure not as much of the rice is broken or lost in the actual milling process, because that can be a challenge.
Yeah, so currently rice is an antiquated and wasteful global industry. It feeds 3.5 billion people daily. But around 60 million tonnes of rice will not make it from farm to fork. And that's enough rice to feed 600 million people in the world for a year. And we've developed a technology that can reduce that loss substantially. Most of that loss is post-harvest. So yes, the impact we can have is tremendous. We are very low power. We call the company Koolmill because we mill cold. That produces a more nutritious rice product, and also the value of the brand products that we produce are very, very lucrative as well. We also use the rice husk waste as a means for power, and also for making a replacement for Portland cement and insulated panels. And so we're kind of trying to make a whole virtuous circle out of every part of the rice plants used productively, and increase or maximising the value, basically. So that's where we're at, but it's quite an interesting business.
Yes, I learned something the other day about rice that I didn't know about, and it was to do with why the Thais use rice noodles predominantly, and it was to do with a failed harvest. But I don't know how long ago, but quite some time ago, maybe 40, 50 years ago, they had a failed rice harvest, and they found they could actually create twice as much rice noodles so they could raw rice, so you could actually feed twice as many people with it. And that's where I forgot the name of the meal. There's a very famous Thai like stir fry with rice noodles, isn't that? I can't think of the name of it now. That actually came out of the government trying to ensure that everybody was fed with this low yield harvest one year. And came out of that. So it is amazing what can be done, in times of need, isn't it?
I think the problem is an economic one. That about 80%, in some parts of the world, 80% of the rice harvest can be lost post-harvest. And that's a huge problem. If you're hungry, you can eat broken rice, but if you lose the rice during processing, it's not available to eat. And there's the people who need our technology can't generate the funds to buy that technology. They don't have the wherewithal to borrow the money to buy the funds. So we've been looking to move our business away from selling machinery to move into a servitization model, a pay-as-you-mill model. And again, this comes back to our circular economy, where our machines are designed to run for 15 years, to be recovered at the end of 15 years, remanufactured and put back out again. So we minimize any end-of-life cost, and we bring that technology through that pay-as-you-mill option, making it affordable and accessible to all millers, regardless of size or location, as I said. So that's the key.
But also that's going to be a challenge for you, because it moves the impetus of the cost of the equipment to you rather than to the end user, because they're just paying for the use of it when they're milling rice. So, you know, it makes it easier for them, but you've still got to, you know, cover the cost of the manufacture, deployment and implementation, haven't you?
The machinery costs not relevant in the long term. Koolmill is about moving the rice industry from cost reduction, input and cost reduction, to output and value. The cost is not relevant if you create value. So our figures would suggest that a typical rural mill in India would have a revenue of 1 and a cost base of 1 for their machinery. We would triple the cost base of their machinery, but we would increase their revenue by 154 times. So the cost is not relevant. It's about how can we create value? How can we shorten there's a very elongated value chain in rice right now. How can we shorten that value chain? How can we rebalance that value chain? And how can we share more equitably the value in that value chain between all of the reduced members of the value chain? We are a for-profit company. We're not about saving the world. We're about positive impact. Profit with purpose is what we call it. So we are about creating value, but sharing that value more equitably amongst the people taking the risk in the value chain. It's very distorted in favour of the large commercials right now.
Yeah. Well, it's been great speaking to you, Alec. Really interesting. And, you know, I knew a lot about you and your business from our conversations over the years. So hopefully it's going to be of interest to others as well. So thank you very much for joining me today. I'm sure you've got other things to get on with and do. So I look forward to speaking to you next time.
Great stuff. Thanks, Lee. Thanks for the opportunity.
Bye.